So thank you all for coming and attending this training. For those who don't know me, my name is Lois Gibbs. I am the founder of the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice. And I have a couple housekeeping things that I just want to mention before we get started. CHEJ, first of all, has merged with People's Action Institute. So we are now sort of multi-issued, if you will. We continue to do exactly what we always did, but now we have a mothership who takes care of some of the backroom work, and they do extraordinary work, and they have a C3 and C4. So check them out if you're interested. The other thing is that everyone is on mute. We have a lot of people on this call, and they have a lot of dogs, and they bark. And so we're asking everybody to stay muted, and then at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for comments and questions. We have a chat function in the Zoom. If you want to put your question in that chat as we go forward so you don't forget it, you're welcome to do so. Those who are on the phone, we will open the phones. We will make sure that we get you even though you're not here with us on Zoom, and make sure that your questions are addressed as well. In order for you to speak, if you're on a telephone as opposed to Zoom, you have to press *6, wait 1 second, then speak, and then *6 again to remute yourself. And again, this will keep the background noise down to a minimum. We're recording this, so it's also nice when you do the recording if you don't have this background noise as well, because then it moves away from the speaker who's presenting or asking a question. And and I have some slides. Those slides should have gone out to them this morning to everybody who RSVP'd. If you didn't get them, we will send them to you. Please let us know in chat where we would send them to, so you can walk through the slides with me. It's a PDF actually, because the slides wouldn't really transfer well, or maybe it does, but I'm just too old to know how to do it. So now it's in a PDF for you all. So we can send you the PDF of the slides. And I think that's all the housekeeping. Do I have it all, Ruth? Leah, is that good? Okay, good, thank you. Great, so let me share my slides here. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay. So what we're talking about is messages and frames and getting your message right. As we just experienced with this massive electoral campaign for president and representatives up and down the ballot, messages were really important. And I think this is a really good time to think about our messages, the frames we're putting our messages in, and how to move forward in a way that that we've seen work and not work as it relates to this most recent election campaign. So I want to start with something that's really basic, and it's called framing. Framing is the frame that your message, your fight, your struggle is in. It's like a picture frame. And those who define the frame of the debate are generally the ones who control the debate. So when we're thinking about our messages for our struggles as we go forward, we really need to think about the framing of that. What does it look like? So this is just a little sort of thing to help you remember that, because if you spell frame, then you can remember, right? So you need to frame the message in terms that define the stakes of the issue. It reinforces your visions and your values that you are promoting. That's what a frame does. You don't talk about what you're doing, what your tactics are, but rather you're talking about the values and the vision that you want. You can reframe your messages frames. And that's what we saw in the electoral campaigns, right? That's what we saw in the presidential campaign. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm just going to go through these real quickly. And you can, sort of reframe the meanings of the terms of the debate on the issue, and you can define new characters, redefine the issue differently, climate change or toxics, you can redefine it differently than they're defining it, and really think about that. You need a frame that's really accessible to your audience. a message that persuades. So again, I'm gonna go to all of these in more detail so you'll get them, but be specific about the audience. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've gone out and talked to people and I say, okay, well, what's your strategy and who's your audience? Well, the public. No, the public is not your audience. The public is the public. Who is the audience you need to move? So we're going to talk more about that as well. And memes, we've all learned about memes now that we're coming into this sort of electronic world, especially us older folk. And memes are really, really important. They have to be memorable. They have to be sticky, kind of stays with it. It encapsulates what your message and your symbol and your slogans and your metaphor and all of that stuff is. And they're really fun. And then lastly, it's emotional. People do things because of emotion, because of values. They don't do things because they see a chart. This is the thing I wanted to tell Barbara Boxer for about 20 years. When she would hold up her chart at every congressional meeting. The charts don't change the world. Emotions and feelings change what people do and how they behave and whether or not they're going to play with you. So I thought this would be an interesting one to look at. This is not, I'm not in favor or not in favor of one or the other. This is not a political thing. But if we look at what was used in this last election, right? To choose hope over fear, unity over division, science over fiction. There's no facts there. There's no facts there. There's no Wall Street there. These are all values, hope over and feelings, hope over fear, unity over division, science over fiction. It's all at stake. Yes, we can. Whose was that? Obama's. Remember Obama saying, yes, we can. And it gave people hope. Yes, we can. We can do anything. And people felt, yes, we can. And they moved in a direction that Obama wanted them to move. We have Trump, keep America great, make America great again. Promises kept. Again, you don't see facts, you don't see figures, you don't see, you don't see anything but emotions there and statements of emotion. Keep America great. You know, when Hillary was running, Hillary started with Hillary Clinton in 2016, America's already great. And she lost that because it wasn't great for the guy who didn't have a job. And it wasn't great for the community that was being poisoned. And it wasn't great for those who didn't have a home. It wasn't great for a lot of people. So these are sort of things you should think about. So in the memes, when you're looking at memes, you know, memorable, easy to spread, kind of sticky, you know, we can look at our markets and our corporate people and what do they do? So Nike, just do it. I mean, how many times do you hear people say, just do it? And they're quoting Nike, and most of them don't even think about Nike, just do it. Apple, think different. Because you're worth it, right? You're going to get your hair done because you're worth it. So when you think about those, you could think about things that are sticky, means like that. So creating tight talking points with value based messages. So that's what we're really talking about here. So you take the value, and the barrier. So the value is protect our children. We protect our children. The barrier is the toxic corporation wants to poison them just a little bit through their air emissions. The solution is stop the poisoning, and the vision is a cleaner world. So when you're looking at doing your message, you're really looking at what is the value? What is your value? What is the barrier? What is the problem? What is the solution? And what is the vision? So I have another example. So let's look at the COVID one. The value, millions of people, millions of Americans are suffering through no fault of their own, They didn't create it by no fault of their own. So they're innocent people, right? The barrier is Mitch McConnell, who's blocking attempts to get aid directly in the hands of the people. That is the barrier. The solution, Mitch McConnell and the Senate must do their job, pass urgent needed COVID relief. The solution is they need to do their job and pass urgent needed COVID-19 relief. And the vision, our families in this country stabilize, provides people the support they need to survive this pandemic. So when you're thinking about your message for your struggle, wherever you are and whatever you're fighting, you need to think about it in the same sort of way. What is the value? What is the barrier? And often, and you know, I don't have a political thing here, but often, you know, if in this one I have Mitch McConnell, the barrier should almost always have a name. It could be a corporate name, it could be an individual names, but people can't fight institutions. So it's not Congress is blocking aid. It's Mitch McConnell who's blocking aid. And we know this is a truth. It's not anything but a truth, right? We know that it's Marathon in Detroit that's poisoning the people. We know that. We have to use those names. That makes your message even clearer. Americans look at messages as a conflict, a good guy, a bad guy. And so Mitch McConnell's name was put there intentionally in this example because we need to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the steps that we need to take. So getting your message across, there's 8 steps to developing a message that reaches your audience, to frame your message to a broad audience, using keywords, developing message, problem, solution, action, and then doing media outreach and publicity. So I'm gonna, there, trying to figure, okay, so first, bring your message to the people. It's very important. You have to bring your message to the people. Powerful and effective messages are not born out of fact and figures, as I said. You need to create a message that is appealing to the core values of people. So this is an example of one of the things that CHEJ did. It's the complicated put simply, effective messages can win campaigns. So in this case, there was a study called the Children's Environmental Exposure Research Study, or CHEERS, which was going to take women, pregnant women, and small children, and they were paying them $750 to spray pesticides around their baseboard of their house. And they gave them a video camera to take pictures of the children and how they reacted to this pesticide spraying. We were outraged. It's like, holy moly, what are you doing? So the pesticide groups wanted to talk about neurotoxins and that these chemicals also cause cancer, and these chemicals can do this and the chemicals can do that. And we're like, no. If we want to win this campaign, it must be value-driven words and messages. So our message was, we don't test pesticides on pregnant women and children. And people were like, well, of course we don't. Of course we don't. And not only in like 48 hours do we have thousands, like 70,000, I can't actually remember the number, but huge numbers of people signing this petition. But Barbara Boxer passed a piece of legislation in Congress that said we will never test. There's a law against testing. No one ever thought we would need a law against testing pesticides or chemicals on children, but there you go. So, so in this case, what won this case was, we don't test pesticides on women and children. It wasn't all of the data about how dangerous pesticides were in a closed environment and so forth. And so the message was very clear, it was very simple, and it was very value-based that made it succeed. So frame your message. As I said before, you have a frame, and by framing your message, those who frame it get to control the message, right? So framing is organizing information to touch an emotional chord with your audience. People act based on emotion, not intellect, and good message framings help you create a broader audience. So when we're talking about the immigration policy and the debate in this country, the one thing, and people were all over the map about what we should and what we should not do around immigration, but one thing they all agreed on was keeping families together, not putting small children in cages, not ripping children out of parents' arms. And so this frame, keep families together, really moved the dial on what was happening in the border in the South. And so, you know, it wasn't all of those other things, the money things, the healthcare things, you know, the jobs. It was economics. It was what moved the dial was we have to keep families together. And so again, it's another example of an emotional, value-based message works better than one of facts and figures and things like that. So framing it. Finding common values that make your message memorable and resonate with your audience. So here are some examples, which is, you know, a bad apple spoils the barrel. People get that. People know that. The people have a right to inclusion, a right to fairness, a right to justice, a right to equality. The costs are too high. I mean, we can use all of these sort of kind of values in what we're doing in our framing. We need messages that last. So they're not coming and going because they're value-based. They have a tendency to last more. Though one of the oldest ones that we talk about a lot in our work is Not in My Backyard, or NIMBY. This was created by polluter companies years ago, public relations. And what it did is it marginalized the concerns of community groups fighting incinerators and toxic landfills. You know what they mean when they say not in my backyard. And we hear that not just in toxics, but we hear that when somebody's trying to put a halfway house in our community, not in my backyard, not here. Or they're putting low-income housing, not here, not here, not in my backyard. So not in my backyard has lasted a really long time. It's very clear about what it means. And so when we're thinking about messages, we need to think about messages that have a similar, not obviously that message, that's a terrible message in part. It should be in nobody's backyard. But in our work, we really need to think about them as ways to stick. So this is an effective message that conveys a sense of what the folks in Peoria was fighting for. So in Peoria, they had a fight for an extension of their toxic waste landfill, and they were not getting people coming to their meetings at all. I mean, literally at all. They had probably 25 people, and they talked about the toxic chemicals and the property values and the leaking and the poisoned water and on and on and on. And the more they talked about all of those facts that were all quite negative, the less people showed up at their meetings. So we did some intensive work with them on messaging, and they came up with this message, which is enough is enough. And so what they did is they changed their whole messaging to say, no more pollution. We've taken our fair share. Enough is enough. Do not make this landfill larger. We've done our fair share for society. Enough is enough. They put a banner across Main Street that said, enough is enough. They went from 25 people at their meeting to 250 people at their meeting and actually beat back the expansion of that hazardous waste landfill. And it was because their message now suddenly worked for the community, because they wanted to stop it, but they didn't want to talk about poisoned water and poisoned ground and house values, because those are all negative. Those are all things they felt was hurting them. All those messages were hurting them, not helping them to move forward. But enough is enough was something they could get their arms around. It's value-based. And they did a similar sort of thing up in Massachusetts, where they were trying to stop a thing from being sited there too. And in their case, they said, how dare they? They already put a prison here. They already put this here. They already put there. How dare they suggest they put this yet another nasty in our community? And they won that fight on a message called, how dare they? How dare they do this? And so it's really, really, really important to think about these very short, simple, declarative, value-based messages that you can then build below. So there's a few rules around it. The values have to resonate. It has to be emotional, not intellectual. Keep it simple and short, fewer than 12 words. If you can do it fewer than 12 words, you are a professional, you are an expert. You will go so much further. It must be short, declarative, believable statement that addresses your target audience. So some of the examples that we were just talking about: keep families together. That's 3 words. We all remember the fight in the Dakotas. Water is life, 3 words. Enough is enough, 3 words. How dare they? 3 words. And the longest one that we've talked about so far is we don't test pesticides on women and children, and that's 8 words. So if you can keep it really short and clear, and it's really hard to do. We asked people to take their message that they had already been using at a workshop and to shorten it. So there was this one group who was trying to fight back this new proposed nasty landfill that they were going to expand, very similar to Peoria. And they were saying this landfill is, and their message was just like, it was just really dorky and long and horrible. And we said, okay, make it smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller, make it smaller. And finally, what they got to is their message, as opposed to, you know, we need to do more testing, we need grid sampling, we need this, we need that, is dig it up, take it out. Dig it up, take it out. And what they were suggesting is they put it in an above ground bunker to protect it from getting back into groundwater or something like that. But it's really important to keep it short, keep it declarative, emotional, and value-based. So target audience. So I said this at the beginning. Those who came late might have missed it. But a target audience, before you develop your message frame, you need to think about who is your audience. What does your target audience think about the issue? And what are your shared values? This is a strategy question. This is not a framing question. You need to figure out, who do you have to move the decision maker? Who are you targeting to sign your petition or to, you know, attend an event at the governor's house or something like that? Who? It can't be everybody, because there isn't a message that meets everybody, because there just isn't. Like, who is your audience? And you really need to think of that through. You can't just assume it's everybody. If you move women, does that help? How does women? So, you know, we were, and Gustavo, who's joined us, he's our new national organizing director, which I'm very proud to have on board. Gustavo was working with the folks down south to talk about, how do we get people to sign this petition in Alabama for the governor to make this, this toxic site a national priority Superfund listed site? So we had to put pressure on the governor. And who's likely to do that? Who's likely to respond? And it's not everybody. But when they decided that the message really belongs, and the ones who are likely to respond are these women, and it's African-American women in Alabama, then the numbers of people who responded and the message changed dramatically, and the number of people who responded increased dramatically. They're connected. So you really need to think about, who is your audience? And your audience is not everybody. Your audience is somebody who you're targeting. It doesn't mean you have to have one audience. So you have African-American women maybe for this particular petition, and maybe you have African-American men for this one, or maybe you have men in general or women in general, or maybe you have career people, or maybe you have customers if you're going after a corporation, as we did with Toys R Us and other things. So you're really looking at, who is your target, and think really hard about this. Who is it that you need to move, and how do you move them? So here's sort of an example. So when you're crafting, you know, a message is a story, and you want to craft a winning story, obviously. So the things you need are sort of here. Oh, I don't know why this is weird. Look at that weird, whoa, sorry, that was, all right, Center for Health is stuck in the middle there for some bizarre reason. It's going to stay. All right, so when you're looking at crafting a story, you need to highlight a conflict. So here you have the activist and you have the CEO. And in this story, the CEO wants to make more poison coming in, right? And the activist said, not in my backyard. This is not going to happen. There's better ways. So it's value driven, right? Because it's really about, my backyard is this farmer family, right? With his 3 little kids and the beautiful green environment behind them. And, you know, America the Beautiful is what you kind of think. There's just missing the flag there, right? And so you have sympathetic characters, and then you show what you mean by appealing to the values of your target audience, and you offer the alternative. So instead of that nasty thing up in the right-hand corner, we could, in that farm where that farm family lives, in that same community, do this solar farm in which we can generate the energy, and we can do it in a safe and sustainable way, not only for climate, if you're into climate, but also for this wonderful family who moved to the farm to, live in a clean, pristine environment and enjoy their family outside of the city. So, when you're talking about who do you need to target for this, you're really thinking about this whole storyline and who would you need to move, who would buy into the characters and the alternative vision. And lastly, say it again and again. So enough is enough. No more landfills in Libertyville. Enough is enough. We don't test on children. How dare they? Not in my backyard, not in anyone's backyard. You say it again and again to the point where when you say it, you just want to throw up, right? Because you're so tired of saying it. You're so tired of looking at it. But you want to say it again and again. And so the key point is like, enough is enough. And if you look, there's 3 supporting points. So you don't have to tell the whole story. You don't have to tell the whole story. There's 3 supporting points. Liberty has a full toxic waste landfill that will be in our community for generations. We've already sacrificed our fair share. Value driven, all American, right? Landfill gases poses health threats to our family. That's for the audience who's concerned about health. And traffic congestion on 123 will increase by 40% if expansion is approved. These 3 points appeal to the core value of people, their livelihood, their health, and their quality of life. And so when you're thinking about your message, you really need to think about it in this very concise, short way. What is it? Enough is enough. Why? And here are the 3 things that make sense, right? It's like Massachusetts, how dare they? And here's the 3 things. We already have a prison, we already have a sewage something or another, and we already have this. How dare they try to put something else nasty here? And how dare they is really the value driven message. And then we talk about keywords that convey your values. So there are keywords, and these keywords matter. Use language that will connect with your largest number of people. So who is your audience, and what are the words that would connect to that audience? Use simple, easy to understand language, no tech talk or inside jargon. So the one time that I will go back to Gustavo's example, they weren't getting much traction on asking people to sign their petition because they were talking about Superfund and people didn't know what Superfund was. They don't know what Superfund is. Why do we assume anybody knows what Superfund is? And by the way, Superfund is also a investment vehicle. It's not just toxic waste. So easy to understand. It's a toxic dump. It's not a confined solid waste facility. It's not. It's a toxic dump, right? Talk about your issue in ways that people can personally relate to by linking it to your core values. Again, family, health, safety, fairness, right? And then help your audience understand what is at stake for them. Like what do they gain? What do they lose by joining with you? And why does that matter to them? Action words are my favorite. Using hard-hitting action words that will grip your audience by the heart and hit them right in the gut. We don't test pesticides on babies. We don't do that. You could sugarcoat it, but when you say that, people are like, whoa, we don't rip children out of mother's arms at the border. We do not do that. These are words. It's rip children, right? I don't know that they ripped children or didn't rip children, but the action words of ripping children out of the mother's arm is just, it tells the stories in ways that are just so important to move people to sign on to your issue or do whatever you're suggesting that they could do to help you. And then, you know, the whole, we are so techie in this movement, it just kind of makes me crazy. But instead of saying things like the factory runoff will negatively impact the surrounding residents, and I've heard even more wonky things than that, say the toxic poison will harm hardworking people, harm innocent children. Poison is poison, toxic is toxic. Hazardous is hazardous. They're called toxic chemicals and hazardous chemicals for a reason. Use those words. Those are very powerful words. Instead of saying dioxin is the most deadly chemical known to man, it's like the most deadly chemical known to man, dioxin. Dioxin is just like, doesn't mean anything. It's the most deadly chemical known to man, or a person now, I guess, I don't know. And then really think about those other words, you know, compassion, fairness, justice, you know, connecting with people's core values is so important. Okay, so we are not going to do this, but you should do this when, after this session, when you're with your group, and really think about how do you take this. And again, you should have a copy of this. If you don't, we'll get you one. But how do you take all of these things that I've been talking about for way too long, and create your message? So the problem, what is the problem you're working to address? Forget all the detailed information that you've gathered. Look at the big picture. Create a message frame that frames the problem clearly and broadly. Whoever frames the problem controls the terms of debate. You know, that's the whole thing. Is COVID nasty, or is COVID going to go away? You know, Trump kept on saying it's going to go away. It's almost gone. You know, he was trying to frame the debate that way, and people were responding to it. So we have to frame the debate, and then we can control it at least a little bit, right? Solution. So it's sort of like, you know, the little CEO there and the activists fighting with their little gloves on. You know, what is the solution? The solution to the problem is really critical. You need to present a solution that's value-based. What kind of society do we want to live in? You don't have to figure out where the money's going to come from to do the X. What you need to say is X is available. We just need to figure out how to move that to our community as opposed to Y, right? So this is the value message. What kind of society do you want to live in? How do you want people to be treated? Make sure to provide hope. You know, we can go back to Obama's, yes, we can, you know, provide hope. I mean, that's what leadership is really about often, is providing hope that people can move to a different place, and whatever that means. And then a call to action. What do we do? I mean, a lot of people go on and on and on about the problem, but there's really no call to action. So what is it you want people to do? And this is really dependent on your audience. So, you know, in Alabama, they wanted women to connect with the governor to get this site listed so that they can be relocated. That's what they wanted people to do. Just send a message to the governor to list the site so they can get relocated. And so, you know, and that was about protecting this low income African-American community by no fault of their own, are subject to all this pollution, right? Their properties values are zero, and, you know, their children are sick and the cancer rate is high, and so forth and so on. So, yeah. And then practice delivering your message, your elevator speech, right? Which, you know, the three parts you have to move together. The problem is X. The solution is Y. And that's why we are calling on the state to pass Z. And it all should be said in a very short action word message. So it's your elevator. By the time you went up and down the elevator, you could do it. The other thing, depending on who you're fighting and what you're doing, I just wanted to share this and then we can open it up for questions, is you can always use, depending on who you're fighting, there are often things that you can use. So in this case, we were working with Unite Here, which is a union that cleans the bathrooms and facilities at Disney World in Orlando. And we were working with them to get these toxic chemicals out of there because they were hurting the workers. And so we had this postcard made, Animal Kingdom's a toxic-free zone. What does Simba have that Cinderella doesn't? You can see the toxics on her thing. And so you know, if you move Disney, you move the entire state of Florida. That's just a fact. And what we wanted to do was to help the workers, but also move the state of Florida away from toxic cleaning in daycare and other places. And so this was a more of a market-based campaign. And so we went, I don't know if any of you have ever been to Disney, but we went to Disney and or to Orlando, sorry. And there's Disney buses at the Orlando airport where they pick up their Disney guests and they take them to the Disneyland and they don't let them out until it's time for them to go home again, right? So they keep them controlled. And we just handed out these flyers and we handed out these various postcards to everybody. And on the other side, it was suggesting what people should do. And, you know, one of the things was don't change your baby on one of those changing tables in the restroom because they were cleaned with that toxic chemical that Cinderella has there. And it really made a difference. And the other part of the campaign was who put Goofy in charge of product design. So Disney came up with an idea to create a DVD for movies that they could just send you. And then it would be good for a month and then it would dissolve, a toxic dissolving CD, you know, it was like, or DVD. I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. And so we had a campaign around that and they also rolled over on that one and lost. Toys R Us, Toxic R Us, we went after with the Teamsters. On Black Friday, we released this Toxic R Us. We have a PVC campaign. And so we use this. So getting consumers on Black Friday to say they don't want to shop at Toys R Us was a huge hit for Toys R Us. And so they were willing to do pretty much anything we wanted them to do at that point. And then, of course, we had our rubber ducky, which we took out on the road in many different places across the country and used it for a number of things. We originally had it for our PVC campaign, but these are wonderful little things that attract attention, right? When you have a 30-foot duck sitting out there, we took it to capitals and said, don't duck the issue for the state representatives. You know, so there was a lot of plays on the duck thing, but you could think about, you know, if you know, in a couple of cases, like who is sending materials to that incinerator? How do you stop them from sending it? Is it a city? Is it a town? Is it a company? You know, there's other enemies out there. And lastly, because we're in a digital world and social media and visuals are so important that you really need to use them as much as you can. And so I'm going to close with this last one, which is this just not right. So this is Port Arthur, Texas, and this is a refinery. That had a little bit of a release, that's what they said. And as you can see, the smoke and all back there are homes. Those are all residential homes. And this just isn't right. And how do we, you know, so we're working with that group to stop this stuff from continuing to happen as they move forward. So, so I'm gonna stop there and I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns you have, both on the phone or on the, you can put it in the chat or you can just raise your hand. Yes, Barbara. Can't hear you. Can we unmute her?
That's because I was figuring out how to unmute myself. I'm over 40. What can I say? Anyway, just to, you know, substantially, I have one question. I know this is something I use and I've used with one of our campaigns, and I'm curious if other people do, using a short musical song or quote to associate with it and put out. I guess that's what I do, but I mean, I am a musician, but in addition, I've used that several different types. Like I've been using it with the pipeline, Northern Access pipeline issue, and I did to try to stop what would have been the biggest toxic dump east of the Mississippi, which we did through Farmersville. And I'm curious if other people have gone that route as well. Sort of as it obviously it's to be going through media, but that's, I haven't connected with many other people who do that, and I'm curious.
I do know that the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth used to have what they called their toxic choir. And it was somewhere 5 to 7 women who played various instruments, and they would create songs that would deliver their message. and they would sing them at the beginning of their meeting. Sometimes they would sing them at, or do a show kind of thing at the State House, or they would go to their representative right outside of their homes and perform. And it made, it's Kentucky, so it wasn't like mainstream. So, there wasn't like sidewalks, they had to be on the side of the road for the most part. But yeah, and it was very effective. I don't know, has anybody else used music or other art? I mean, there's other art too.
As an example, I just wanted to give an example of what I was doing with the pipeline. I had was a big black snake crawling out of Pennsylvania from New York State, 100 miles wide, 20 feet wide, poison for profits, what it carries inside. And that's sort of what I was doing, but I would be really interested to see what other people are.
Nice.
And we taught that to a group of people.
Oh, great. Yeah. Pam?
Hey, Lois, I have a chicken suit and I'm practicing a TikTok dance. And I think TikTok is really important now. And there's a lot going on there. So we got to practice dancing and get busy on the new social medias.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And make sure you have what you want people to do. Because if those things go viral, I mean, you can get 1 million people sending some local Yoko mayor a letter, right? I mean, that would just yeah. So I love that. I want to see it, Pam. Send it to me. Yeah.
I've been fighting the Permian Highway pipeline in Central Texas for almost 2 years now. I wrote a rap song. I'm a musician and a songwriter, but this one came out as a rap, and talk about a pipeline 42 wide with 2 billion cubic feet of crud inside. It just ain't natural and it ain't just gas. It's a toxic fracking cocktail likely gonna blast. But it ends with, it goes through the corrupt politicians as well as explaining why, it's bad to put a pipeline over 2 million people's water supply. So let's dump the corrupt ones bought and sold, vote in some new blood, honest and bold, to represent the people, not to profit from election, and move us to clean energy. Now that'd be perfection.
Nice. Nicely done. Nicely done. So there's a couple questions in the chat. Let me read them real quickly. Do you think that as people keep getting bombarded with emotional messages that they will be desensitized, and what can you do about that? No. And that's why politicians still use them today. No. We all have our values, wherever we got our values from, our parents or our church or whatever. And yeah, no, that's just core. And so I think that is not a problem. And in the 40 years I've been doing this and going to classes to learn how to improve my messaging, the teachers have consistently said, values matter, emotions matter. That's what people react to. They do not react to other sort of things. So that's my opinion. I'm not an expert on it, but that's my opinion. What do you have? What advice do you have for groups that are in the middle of a court battle? Is that court does not equal justice. We never win justice in court. We just don't. But it's a perfect stage, right? It's a perfect stage. So on a number of occasions, we have had demonstrations in front of the courthouse. We know that it is legal to poison people in the United States of America. That's what permits are. We know this is true. And then you can tell your story in front of the courthouse differently each day. You can do a human interest story, someone who's been harmed. You can have your choir come and sing on the second day. But court in of itself will not win the issue. What will win the issue is the public participation. And so you're really playing two courtrooms, one of public opinion and one in the court itself. And so if you are in court and you are not doing something on the steps of the courthouse, shame on you, because that's a perfect venue. And if you can change it each time, so it's not the same old, people don't, it's got to be different. Get your chicken outfit from Pam. Maybe she'll let you borrow it. Barbara Sullivan used to work for us, had one. I don't know what she did with that, but maybe Sharon knows. But figure out how to do it and how to do it creative and differently, because that really makes a difference. And it's a perfect opportunity, because every night at 5 o'clock, especially in smaller towns and city, they're going to say, while the court is still going on hearing about blah, 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 outside today, they had the chicken dancers and they were really kind of cute. Didn't quite get their message, but they were adorable, or something. You know, you can bring the kids. Kids can come and sing God Bless America. We want to keep our, you know, I mean, there's just plenty of things to do. So don't think of a courtroom as a single venue, that it actually opens up another venue that you would be foolish not to take advantage of. And you don't need 100 people. You need 5 people, right? You need 1 for the video camera and 4 to perform. That's all you need. So, you know, when we're also thinking about these things, we don't really always need hundreds of people. And in today's world, because of social distancing, you really do want to keep it small, and you do want to keep that in mind. So like in Alabama, they did a caravan instead of a march, and they just did a caravan and had signs on their cars all around their decision makers' property. So, you know, think about how to do that under these times are different. Strategically, if you identify a polluter, do you try to get action towards the polluter from the regulatory agency first, or immediately start building buy-in from the public through messaging from the get to go to the larger pressure for more significant? Okay, Christine, talk to me about this one. We currently have a polluter ID and we are weighing this. Exposure of our findings too soon could jeopardize the data. So
Hi.
Where are you? There you are. Thank you.
Keep my video off because we're having Zoom connectivity issues today.
That's fine.
Basically, we're in a situation right now where we've identified a pretty big polluter that's having an impact on a significant population, a high population density. It seems like the regulatory agencies that have oversight are not acting, or it's not on their radar. We could begin to put up monitors, basically air monitors and cameras. But what we need at that point is individuals who are residential homeowners to basically to buy into that and agree to put those monitors up on their homes. We can do that discreetly, or we can do it simultaneously with a sort of messaging campaign that begins to build awareness relative to this polluter. We're sort of weighing, are we playing our hand too soon by getting more and more people involved? How discreet should we be as we collect this data? In the end, we have a significant problem where we are in terms of pollution anyway. We're one of the highest ranked poor air quality areas in the nation. Mm-hmm. So we really want to see a kind of a culture shift at the end of the day. And this particular polluter has multiple plants in our area. Do you, I just wondered, I mean, there's a lot of detail here, but I sort of wondered, generally speaking, when do you launch? At what stage, can you give us some examples in terms of like, at what stage do you launch the messaging aspect of things when you're trying to turn the tide and get some action?
From the beginning, I mean, literally from the beginning, everything you said has the same target and a different message, right? And a different audience. So yeah, I mean, you know, we're going to put air monitors up because we don't trust government and the industry for doing it. And we're going to do this, and we're going to collect our own data, and we're going to hold them accountable. Because in this country, you have to hold people accountable for it. You know, accountable is a value, right? You know, from the get-go. Yeah. Because as long as you're quiet, you're not a threat to more pollution. Mm. And when you get your data, how you play your data out when you find it, you know, really is a strategic question that fits into a longer term plan. So I hesitate to answer that one, but you really think about, what are you doing and what are the steps? And then how do you move people to help you beat back this corporation? Who's a corporation?
It's Lindy Paving.
Paving, like blacktop?
Asphalt. Yeah, it's an asphalt. Yeah, and it's located on the riverfront, very close to heavily populated areas. And because everybody's had their attention on a larger steel coke works industry target, this one's kind of gone under the radar. We're in a particular situation where we are here in Pittsburgh, where the jurisdiction in terms of regulation falls under the county health department. There's no real significant state oversight. And so the county just, for various reasons politically and just capacity wise, things tend to slip through the cracks. And we've been photo documenting and monitoring. I literally drove around to match the smell to some of the smells in the neighborhoods to find that this was the source. And now we have some photo documentation. We have some people in the surrounding area willing to put up a monitor to,
you just take your photo documentation and blow that up. You know what it costs at Kinko's for a 36 by 24 is $8.
Okay.
Right? So you just get that and put it on something and then say, you know, this is what we're seeing. Go to the county health department. Go to, like, I don't know who has the decision-making power in your community, but like that, you have that. What use it, right? And then when you have the monitors, you know, you use that. I mean, each time it's like every step you take has a message attached to it. I mean, if you were to look at, for example, back at, I don't know, the Love Canal fight, we had a press conference every week. We didn't have all the stuff you all have now, right? We didn't have Zoom. We didn't have, you know, all of this electronic stuff. And we tried to create it. We had the horror story of the day. So you could do a horror story of the day. This is our picture. And this is what happened to this family. They had to take their child to the hospital for an asthma attack. These things are connected in our mind. We can't prove it yet, but we will, because we're getting air monitored. Like every week, you all should have a new story that's value driven, that's very simple. And I mean, everybody knows what asphalt smells like. Is there anybody on this phone who's never smelled asphalt and thought it was horrible? Like everybody's like, would you like to eat your dinner on fresh asphalt? Because that's what we're living with. Would you like to have a barbecue in the backyard with fresh asphalt smell? I mean, there's just so many things you could play with. So think about that as a way to move forward, because I think it really would make a difference. So I did want to open this up for people on the phone. So are there people on the phone who have a question that, Lynn, you're on mute, honey.
Okay, I have two questions because about fracking in Western Pennsylvania. I know it doesn't seem like there have been a lot of successes around that. I've been working with a lot of kids who've been going and testifying, meeting with their elected officials that just say everyone's bought and corrupt. And I wondered whether you have any suggestions for these groups when it comes to fracking, and if you could share any successes about fracking in Western Pennsylvania, and also, you know, I've been doing these Young Voices for the Planet films, successes of young people regarding fracking or in any of these other issues, the power of the youth voice.
Yeah, so there was one win that I know in Western Pennsylvania that was around schools, the Mars School District. So in Western Pennsylvania, they were trying to do a buffer zone of all fracking infrastructure within, and I can't actually remember, I want to say 1 mile of a school, but there was some distance defined there, and they won that. And how they won that was twofold. One, they got all the parents involved, and again, the value was we don't frack around our children. The leaks, the traffic, the chemicals, all of that stuff. So it was a real threat to children. The traffic was huge because they couldn't go on their bicycles back and forth to school because they had all these stupid trucks on the road, right? And so they built a campaign based on children's safety to and from school. And they won this buffer around their elementary school in the Mars School District, which is in Western Pennsylvania, somewhere. I can't remember where. And then I know that Brettel, and Brettel was on, but I don't. Brettel did the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, did some work with communities around youth and fracking and the pipeline. So they were fighting the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And so all of that came together as well. And there's lots more youth related stuff happening around pipelines and fracking, especially down south. So I think it's very encouraging, but really, if you can get in through the school system, that is the way you can both capture the hearts and the minds of the parents as well as the children. And I think that that's how they won in Mars, and they've won in a couple other places where they've actually created buffer zones for different reasons. And it's been pretty successful. So I am being mindful of the time. And I want to thank all of you. You can always send us an email if you have more questions. We're more than happy to answer them. Our next one won't be until, our next training is not until after Christmas. Is that right, Leah? Do you know? I'm right? Okay. And, you know, messaging is really important. And you really need to think about who's your target, who do you need to move, what are the values, and how to make that message. And look at that the last part of your copy of the slides where it says problem, solution, action. If you could fill that out and you can do it in short words and value driven, you are more likely to move forward in your struggle than trying to do it the way we often end up doing it, saying the air stinks, we're going to die, and it's parts per something. So thank you all for coming. Thank you for participating, and happy holidays to you. However we're going to do that in this pandemic. Appreciate you.
You too. Thanks, Lois.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.